In our headlines on this Wednesday afternoon, March 22nd. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin agree wholeheartedly on economic expansion, but not tangibly on a path to peace for Ukraine. Chip makers that receive US subsidies are required to restrict their business ventures in certain countries, including China, Russia and Iran, to name a few. South Korea witnesses more losses of lives than the celebrations of new births in the month of January, prompting a further natural decrease in national population. We start over in Moscow. Summit talks between China and Russia ended on Tuesday with a tangible accord on future economic ventures, but no visible progress on a peace plan for Ukraine. Our Lee Jae-myung has the latest.
After holding informal talks for over 4 hours on Monday, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin held talks again on Tuesday, this time with their full delegations. And after their meeting on Tuesday, the two leaders signed and released a joint statement at the Kremlin in Moscow, where they called on the need to settle the Ukraine crisis through peace talks. Titled The Joint Statement of the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation on Deepening the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership of Coordination for the New Era, both Xi and Putin stressed that the purposes and principles of the UN Charter must be observed and international law must be followed regarding the Ukraine conflict. Putin praised the Chinese leader's push to bring peace between Ukraine and Russia. However, he accused Kyiv and its Western allies of rejecting it. Xi, meanwhile, barely mentioned the ongoing war in Ukraine. Instead, apparently tried to remain firm on China's neutral stance. However, some American pundits say China's neutral stance needs to be questioned, as Xi's visit to Russia highlights his determination to push back against the U.S. and its Western allies. Meanwhile, President Xi invited President Putin to visit China this year, in what some believe is a symbolic show of support after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Putin. Xi extended the invitation during Tuesday's meeting, inviting Putin to the third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation, along with Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin. Putin attended the Belt and Road Forum on 2 previous occasions in 2017 and 2019. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Tuesday warned China against providing arms support to Russia. He said that the joint statement issued by the two leaders showed that China and Russia are coming closer, and that any weapon support from China would mean its support for an illegal war.
So first, we haven't seen any proof that China is delivering lethal weapons to Russia. But we have seen some signs that this has been a request from Russia, and that this is an issue that is considered in Beijing.
He added that if China is serious about bringing peace, it also needs to understand Ukraine's stance and communicate directly with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Right, and that was precisely what Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida sought to do. He made a surprise visit to Kyiv on Tuesday for talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, Prime Minister Kishida pledged $470 million worth of fresh aid for the energy sector and some $30 million through NATO funds for non-lethal equipment. He also invited President Zelensky to the G7 summit in May over in Hiroshima. In response, the Ukrainian leader vowed to take part virtually. The Japanese Prime Minister is the last G7 leader to travel to Ukraine, a show of solidarity, and he is also Japan's first post-war leader to enter a war zone since World War II. In other news, the Biden administration is seeking to curb chip expansion in certain countries by restricting related business ventures by companies that receive U.S. funds. Our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon tells us what this means for Korean chip makers.
Semiconductor producers that receive U.S. subsidies will not be able to expand production of advanced chips in countries of concern by more than 5% over the next 10 years. This applies to South Korean companies such as Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, who have production lines in China. Other countries of concern include Iran, Russia, and North Korea. On Tuesday local time, the U.S. Commerce Department released a notice of proposed rulemaking, and through a statement, U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo said, "The innovation and technology funded in the CHIPS Act is how we plan to expand the technological and national security advantages of America and our allies. These guardrails will help ensure we stay ahead of adversaries for decades to come." The Commerce Department says the limits on expansion is, quote, meant to allow for funding recipients that have existing facilities in a foreign country of concern to continue to operate and maintain their competitiveness by allowing for technological upgrades as long as the cap is met. The rule also limits recipients of incentive funds from engaging in joint research or technology licensing efforts with a foreign entity of concern and prohibits recipients of CHIPS incentives from using the funds in other countries. The proposed regulations allow the U.S. government to claw back the entire funding awarded to any recipient that breaks the Act's rules. South Korean companies had been anxiously waiting on the details of the restrictions as Samsung and SK both announced investment into the U.S. aiming for this subsidy, which could offer each company up to $53 billion through subsidies and tax cuts. However, the announcement was not as strict as expected, and Samsung and SK will be able to receive the subsidy while continuing production in China. With the new announcement, local reports quoted company officials from Samsung saying the company has avoided the worst. Currently, Samsung produces some 40% of its NAND flash chips, and SK hynix manufacturing about half of its global DRAM chips in China. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, at the National Assembly here, the Parliamentary Finance Committee on Wednesday passed the so-called K-CHIPS Act, largely aimed at bolstering the local semiconductor industry. The act is an amendment to the Act on Restriction of Special Taxation and raises the tax deduction rate for conglomerates and medium-sized businesses in selected tech industries from the current 8% to 15%. For smaller businesses, the rate will rise to 25% from the current 16%. The Act also calls for more tax deductions for research and development expenditure for this year. Should all go according to plan, the Act may be put to a vote next Thursday at the plenary session. Korea continues to see a concerning demographic portrait. Findings for January show the losses of lives surpass the celebrations of new births, prompting a further natural decrease in national population. Our Moon Hae-ryun reports.
South Korea this year saw the lowest number of births and the highest number of deaths for the month of January, since data was first compiled in the early 1980s. Data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday show the number of births dropped from over 24,000 in January 2022 to just over 23,000 this year, a 6% decrease on year. Meanwhile, the number of deaths rose by 9.6% on year. With over 32,000 deaths recorded in January, the natural change, calculated by subtracting the number of deaths from the number of births, came to a decline in the population of some 9,000. However, the figures were more optimistic when compared with December last year. The number of births rose nearly 38% on month, and the number of deaths fell by nearly 2%. The birth rate in the past few years has generally been a bit higher in the first half of the year than in the second half. With the easing of COVID-19 restrictions last year, the number of registered marriages rose for 4 months in a row in the second half of last year. This streak ended with a drop in the number of marriages on month in January, falling from nearly 20,000 to 17,926. But compared to January 2022, the number of marriages went up by 21.5% on year. The number of births hit an all-time low last year, falling below the 250,000 mark, but this increase in the number of marriages is expected to have a positive impact on birth rates ahead. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
And on the local political front, after 18 months of investigation, the prosecution here has indicted the main opposition Democratic Party's chairman, Lee Jae-myung, on charges of corruption. Now, he is alleged to have used his former position as mayor of Seongnam City to grant favors to property developers, allowing them to pocket some $610 million in illegal proceeds for the Daejangdong redevelopment project. Prosecutors claim the city government suffered some $380 million of losses in light of Lee Jae-myung's malfeasance. He also faces accusations of bribery involving Seongnam Football Club in the mid-2010s. He has denied all allegations and accused the government of orchestrating the probes. The latest development follows the National Assembly's earlier rejection by a slim margin, a motion seeking parliamentary consent for Lee's arrest. Staying on the local front, some college cafeterias are committing themselves to easing the financial burden of dining out for those within the academic arena. Our finance correspondent Arirang covers these campus efforts and more.
It's only 7:40 in the morning, but students are lining up in front of this cafeteria. They are here for a so-called 1001 breakfast. Starting last week, one university in Seoul is offering students low-priced meals in the morning at a cost of around 77 cents. The same meal used to cost 4,000 won, or just a little over $3. Only 130 meals are prepared per day and given out on a first-come, first-served basis.
I used to skip breakfast, but now I've started to have it again because it's cheap.
I think this is great and hope it goes on longer so that many students can enjoy it.
One official from the student office says it's planning to expand the project as the meal line is getting longer every day.
We found that many students skip breakfast because of the burden of high prices. That's when we decided to participate in the 1001 breakfast project with financial support from the government.
According to Statistics Korea, prices for dining out last year hit their highest in 30 years. The younger generation, especially those who live alone, have had to deal with worrying inflation over the past year. Products in smaller sizes and with lower prices are helping them to lessen the burden. For people who live alone and want a smaller proportion for a lower price, here's also a half serving of tteokbokki. Not only at an affordable price, but people say it could also reduce food waste.
It was hard for me to finish up all the food by myself, so for me, I would love to have half-serving tteokbokki at an affordable price of 3,000 won.
Amid the soaring prices for dining out, these trends are expected to expand further as more young people are making greater efforts to tighten their purse strings. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Today, that is March 22nd, is World Water Day, as designated by the United Nations, with an inaugural celebration 30 years ago. That being said, my colleague Song Yoo-jin shares with us the importance of this particular designation as millions continue to lack safe water to drink, let alone to wash. To take a look.
Water is life. It makes up almost 70% of our bodies. But it's not just about staying hydrated and healthy. Water is also essential for energy, food production, and healthy ecosystems. In 2015, the world set an ambitious goal to provide everyone with clean water and sanitation by 2030. With less than a decade to go, we're still facing a dire shortage in terms of both quantity and quality. As of 2021, 2 billion people lacked access to safe drinking water, and 1.4 million die every year due to poor water quality.
The problems are related to decades of misuse and also poor management and over-extraction of groundwater and contamination of freshwater resources. And if you think about the current mega trends of urbanization, population growth, and also industrialization, and together with now natural cause, for example, climate change, those are now making things even worse.
As for South Korea, hygiene is not an issue, but the amount of water available is a problem.
We're grappling with severe drought except for during the monsoon season. The amount of rain per day has not changed significantly, but we're seeing fewer rainy days.
Then, what can we do about this water crisis?
We don't need to have more technologies more. Perhaps we need to pay more attention to how the people, they think about the water issues more fundamentally, and how to also to change their consumption behaviors and also the industrial restructuring in terms of using less water.
The government should devise ways to educate people of the importance of conserving and managing water.
But it's not just up to governments. We can all play a part in our daily lives. And because 90% of power generation is water intensive, you can start by turning off unused devices while you sleep. Shop sustainably, buy food you'll actually eat. That's because reducing food waste reduces demand on agriculture, one of the biggest consumers of water. For example, it takes about 3,000 to 5,000 liters of water to make up 1 kilogram of rice. Finally, share your efforts on social media with the hashtag World Water Day. Generate debates, raise awareness, and inspire others to take action. Be the change you want to see in the world. 송유진, Arirang News.
Right, on a light note now, we shed light on a traditional Korean liquor that goes back to the Joseon dynasty. Our Shin Se-byuk offers us a taste.
Sweet, red dough. That's what this Korean traditional liquor Gamhongno literally means. This liquor, with its deep, gentle aroma, was considered one of the 3 best liquors of the Joseon dynasty. Amid increased global popularity of Korean culture, the Culture Ministry has published a book that introduces various traditional alcoholic beverages, and Kamungno was one of them. Although it may not be as popular as other drinks such as makgeolli, Kamungno has long been considered a medicinal liquor that warms the body. Today, Kamungno is brewed in Paju, Gyeonggi-do Province by Korea's Grand Master No. 43 Lee Ki-suk. He is the only person in Korea who can make the liquor using the traditional recipe that's been passed down through generations of her family. Making Kamungno is all about waiting and patience. First, she mixes rice, millet, and the Korean fermentation starter duruk and lets the mixture sit and ripen for 15 days. Even the slightest change in temperature at this step can make a huge difference in taste later on. For the next 4 months, she distills it twice to get this crystal clear, 40% strength fine soju. However, it is only halfway there. She then adds 7 medicinal herbs, including ginger and cinnamon, before letting it sit for 3 more months. After that, she removes the solids from the liquid and lets the drink rest for 1 more year. And here marks the end of the 1.5-year journey of this red-colored dough that satisfies the senses of sight, smell, and taste. He says her goal is to continue to pass down the family legacy, keeping Korea's traditional drinks culture alive for future generations.
Kamungno began as a part of my father's and my grandmother's everyday life. Now it has become a part of Korean culture over time. I want to pass down not only the recipe, but also the spirit to our future generations.
She also says with Korean traditional alcoholic drinks becoming a candidate representing South Korea as its next culture ambassador, Kamungno could warm people's hearts.
Kamungno is a liquor of warmth. I hope that it can serve as a symbol of Korean warmth and hospitality. In that way, I believe this could potentially contribute to the spread of Korean culture.
Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Haiti, the United Nations has reported on the devastating impact of gang violence in the country. According to a UN report on Tuesday, at least 530 people have died this year alone in Haiti as a result of increasing gang-related violence. This is on top of 277 recorded kidnappings and 300 people left injured in attacks, which have mostly taken place in the capital, Port-au-Prince. The UN says the majority of casualties were killed or injured in sniper-like, seemingly indiscriminate shootings. In a bid to mitigate the situation, the UN has called for foreign intervention in the form of a specialized support force. And with US President Joe Biden set to address the issue while meeting the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Ottawa on Thursday, the UN will be hoping that Biden can convince Trudeau to send a security intervention team to stabilize the Caribbean country. Turning over to Uganda now, where Parliament passed a new law on Tuesday that brings back the death penalty and life sentences for homosexuality. Called the Anti-Homosexuality Bill, the law would give the death penalty for so-called aggravated homosexuality and life in prison if caught having gay sex. It marks an even stricter crackdown on the LGBTQ community in a country that has already banned homosexuality. The new law also introduces a 10-year prison sentence for merely identifying as LGBTQ or engaging in same-sex related activities. Such activities include promoting and abetting homosexuality. Supporters of the law say it's necessary to preserve traditional values, but human rights activists say that it violates multiple fundamental rights. Meanwhile, a major review into London's Metropolitan Police has accused it of being institutionally racist, sexist and homophobic. This is according to a 363-page report released on Tuesday, which followed a year-long review. The report alleges that the Met failed to protect both members of the public and female staff. It included stories of sexual assaults, many of which were covered up, and instances where evidence from rape cases was not properly stored. The report comes as public trust in Britain's biggest force has collapsed in the wake of a number of scandals, including a case where a police officer raped and murdered a woman. The report also included instances of racism and bullying among Met police officers. And finally, thousands of people gathered in Mexico's Teotihuacan ruins on Monday local time to welcome the spring equinox, also known as the first day of the solar new year. Dressed in white, pilgrims from both Mexico and abroad climbed Teotihuacan's Pyramid of the Sun and welcomed the first light of the solar new year. It's believed by many that doing so imbues them with energy from the pyramid and the equinox sun. The 2,000-year-old Pyramid of the Sun serves as a gathering space for meteorological events and is the world's third largest pyramid. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Those of us in central parts of the country are having late May-like warmth, going up to 12 degrees higher than season norms today, with some record-breaking top temperatures this afternoon. But unfortunately, the ultrafine dust level will stay high in the capital region and Chungcheong-Namdo province, so please have a face mask that can filter dust today. Mostly sunny skies are turning cloudy with rain in the forecast, but Jeju has been seeing rain since this morning, which will spread to southern provinces late this afternoon before expanding to the capital region tonight. This round of rain, which will continue into tomorrow afternoon, will help to ease the dryness in the air. And Seoul and Chungcheon are seeing highs nearing 25 degrees this afternoon. The temperatures return to normal at the end of the week, with rain to continue on Jeju through Saturday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That ends our afternoon newscast for this Wednesday. Do stay tuned for our panel session coming up right after this break. See you soon.